That's right. Nobody loves being center stage more than Donald Trump, and he knows how to use that to his advantage toward boosting his campaign. Now, of course, the question on a lot of people's minds is, he goes to trial, say he's convicted, can he still run for president? Well, at this point, here's what we know. This is, first of all, unprecedented. It's never happened before, and so this really is new ground we're all treading on. But also, yes, he can. At this point, there's nothing stopping him from continuing his campaign. He has announced that he has announced his candidacy for the Republican nomination. That can continue. Can he win the Republican nomination? For now, he remains the front runner until others jump into the ring. Still, even then, that may split the vote, and he may still win the Republican nomination in about a year and a half from now. And yes, he can still win the presidency. This is all quite new. And remember that this isn't, or this trial at least, when this goes to trial, it won't be the end of Donald Trump's legal woes. He is facing, he is under an investigation by a special counsel at the Department of Justice here in Washington, who is looking into two things. One, his mishandling of classified and top secret documents at his Mar-a-Lago estate that he took with him apparently after he left the White House. And two, whether or not he's responsible for the attack on the Capitol, the insurrection that took place on January 6, 2021, when he told his supporters to march on the Capitol and to fight for his campaign and for his right to be back in the White House. And as I pointed out, he still maintains he won the 2020 election and that the Biden administration essentially stole that from him. He tends to use that language a lot. And in addition to all of that, there is also an investigation in Fulton County in Georgia that alleges Donald Trump interfered in that county's election process. You'll recall in 2020 when Donald Trump made the call to the Georgia Secretary of State asking him to find a specific number of votes that would put Donald Trump over the threshold and allow him to win the state of Georgia. Of course, it was Joe Biden that ended up winning that state. It was quite a landslide for Biden at the time. But nobody has ever won as many votes, or no losing candidate has won as many votes as Donald Trump did in 2020. So there's certainly that for the former president.
Yasmin, we know that a lot of thought would have gone into that moment we saw Donald Trump, his defense team of Joe Tecopita and Todd Blanche, experienced lawyers at operating at the highest levels of exposure to publicity. So they will have put a lot of thought into what he looked like, his facial expression, how he carried himself for that brief walk from the vehicle into the DA's office. He looked very serious. He did a sober wave, he looked around, and that was it, and then walked off without any more kind of body language for people to speculate around. But he looked serious, and one wonders if that's because he planned to look serious or if indeed he is slowly realizing the extent of the trouble he might be in these law procedures.
Well, he knows he's got plenty of supporters rooting for him. We even know there's members of Congress up there in New York who are staging protests out there to support the former president. So we did expect that wave. He is acknowledging that there are people standing with him. Remember, he's framing this as political persecution, as a witch hunt, that he's being made into a victim. And he really sort of almost plans to be the martyr in all of this, to come out as the person who was right when everybody else was wrong. And look, from what we know of 4 years of Donald Trump here at the White House is that no matter the team around him, you really can't choreograph what the former president is going to do. Donald Trump has his own way. He's done it for decades. Those who have followed him and covered him in New York, particularly those tabloids early on in his career, know quite well that the president will only do what he wants to do.
Thanks very much indeed for your insights. We'll come back to you soon in Washington, I'm sure. Let's join the moment that a lot of people have been waiting for, the so-called perp walk, the so-called presentation of the accused to the authorities in true American fashion.
Well, you know, there won't be the so-called perp walk because they're going to bring him in a side entrance of the building called 1 Hogan Place. and that is a very small doorway on a side alleyway street adjacent to the courthouse where he'll be. Then he'll be taken up to the 15th floor, a specially prepared courtroom where he'll be processed. There will be fingerprints. There won't be any handcuffs. However, as far as photographs, they will allow at least 5 still photographers from the media gathered here to take some pictures when he first comes into the courtroom, and then they'll be kicked out after that before the indictment is read out. Then the indictment will be read out before Judge Juan Marchand. Interesting fact here, that judge is the same judge that sentenced Alan Weisselberg, the former CFO of the Trump Organization, who pled guilty not long ago to tax fraud charges. And that could be at the heart of what is going on here when it comes to one of the felony charges that is facing Mr. Trump. We understand late last night, word leaked out that there was one felony charge in there, likely connected to the federal election campaign law, and that involves the paying of money, hush money, to the porn star Stormy Daniels to keep quiet before the 2016 campaign election. So this is what we're waiting for. Mr. Trump is about to arrive here within the next 10 to 15 minutes. The courthouse around is sealed off. Secret Service, we have state police, we also have NYPD, court officers, and also across the street, there's almost 1,000 people packed in there, media, protesters, onlookers, all waiting to see the motorcade arrive, but it's unlikely that they will actually see physically Mr. Trump's face before he gets inside this building here.
Nonetheless, I gather that some of the media have been queuing pretty much since yesterday afternoon to make sure they secure a decent seat in the courthouse. A lot of people want to get inside there to have a first-hand view, I guess, because there won't be any coverage apart from those 5 photographers you talked about.
Yes, well, you know, last night, the key courthouse reporters that have been here for years were lining up against the fence by the courthouse, and they were telling me, yes, indeed, they were going to be staying here overnight so they could be among the first to get in the courtroom. It doesn't hold that many people. There will be some courthouse artists in there. Members of the public are entitled to actually get in there, but that will be limited. The Secret Service has actually asked that the building on floors below the 15th floor be cleared of all other business while Mr. Trump is inside being arraigned. Once he leaves, it'll be business as usual because that is the Manhattan Criminal Court where there are the cases going on at this hour.
You mentioned the Secret Service being involved, of course, because this is a former president we're talking about. We mentioned NYPD, of course, which have had all their arrangements they've had to make, considering the public focus on this event. It is quite an interruption for this downtown courtroom, but presumably also the arrangements in terms of the handcuffs, in terms of the arrival, in terms of the former president's surrendering himself into the custody of the DA. All this has been a matter of negotiations between the DA's office and Donald Trump's defense team, I suppose.
Yeah, that started from the beginning, and I don't know if you can hear the helicopters hovering overhead from the New York City Police Department as part of the security curtain that is surrounding the courthouse here. But yes, they've been negotiating for about a week now with the Secret Service, with Mr. Trump's attorneys and the NYPD, and of course the District Attorney's Office. The first thing that was off the plate was no handcuffs. The other thing is whether or not Mr. Trump will be fingerprinted, because apparently everybody has his fingerprints in law enforcement from a gun permit that he had years ago. So he may not need to be fingerprinted. As far as a mugshot, that is still up for debate. And also, this particular judge will have to decide just how many people are going to be able to pack that courtroom. Now, in terms of the amount of the law, well, when it comes to the district attorney and what he will accept, the district attorney does not have to offer any kind of plea deal to the President of the United States, the former President of the United States. He can reject any kind of request from the defense attorneys to make a plea and drag Donald Trump through an entire trial, which probably won't start until later on this fall.
Frank, thanks very much. Stay with us, of course. There's still plenty more to come from this.